In the United States, Arizona has filed criminal charges against Kalshi, a popular online prediction market site. The state accuses Kalshi of running an illegal gambling operation. Now, here's the potentially confusing thing. You can place bets through Kalshi, but those bets are on real-world events. For example, when a war might end, or one that's on there right now, when will Bitcoin surpass $100,000? It's what's called a prediction market.
Kalshi is available nationwide and lets you live trade against others on anything, like sports.
There you go.
Politics.
Now you're warming up.
Movie scores.
The case is the first in an ongoing battle between states, which regulate gambling, and the U.S. federal government, which has jurisdiction over markets. Arizona's Attorney General argues that Kalshi offers gambling, not a futures market, so it needs state approval to operate. Okay, this is new to a lot of us, probably for many of you who are watching. So let's connect with Danny Funt. He's a freelance journalist who covers prediction markets. He's also the author of the book "Everybody Loses: The Tumultuous Rise of American Sports Gambling." Danny, you just heard what's happening between Kalshi and Arizona. Before we get into details, tell us about this site.
So Kalshi is the fastest growing prediction market in the US. A lot of people hadn't even heard of it as of a year or two ago, but it's exploded to the point that people are risking billions of dollars on this site across the US. It's federally regulated, as you mentioned. So whereas states have legalized sports gambling in particular over the last several years, this is under the supervision of the federal government. And that's why it's clashing with a number of states, not just Arizona, because Kalshi insists it's a form of investing. A lot of states and other people think it's gambling by a different name. And so there's a big fight over how exactly that's going to play out.
Okay, so let's get a little deeper into this. It's not hard for me to see why this would be considered a betting site, which, as you point out, would mean that it would be subject to state regulation. The counter argument appears to be that it's as you say, a futures market. So it's akin to where investors kind of bet on the future price of crops, and that's regulated by the federal government. Do you think Arizona's claim that this is an illegal betting site is going to hold up?
I'm not so sure. I think what was surprising about it was that this criminal allegation relates to election betting on the presidential race and other state races in Arizona. And a lot of the controversy up till now has been the fact that something like 90% of the money flowing through Kalshi is on sports. And although roughly 38 states in the US have legalized sports betting in some form, several haven't, notably California and Texas. So the fact that Kalshi describes its version of betting on sports as something other than gambling has been quite contentious in federal court. And I do think that has a chance of being denied by judges across the country. As for whether election betting falls under state gaming law or the state's purview, that seems like a more novel allegation. And I'll be quite curious to see how that plays out.
Okay, let's put aside this jurisdictional dispute for a moment. We have a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you more generally about sites like this. So, first of all, you know, an argument's been made that there is some kind of predictive power in sites like this. So, in other words, you know, one of the things on the site today is who's going to be the Democratic nominee in the next presidential election. And I was looking at the the two frontrunners. There's an argument that if enough people get involved in kind of their prediction, that actually might reflect even more accurately than polls who might win. What's your view on that?
There are a number of studies in the US and abroad that demonstrate that prediction markets are more predictive, for lack of a better word, than opinion polls, that they more consistently offer a better foreshadowing of what's going to happen in an election, or really anything, than surveying people. That's why, for a long time, these were of great interest to scholars and researchers and journalists who saw the public losing faith in polls and said, if you have a lot of people betting money and having skin in the game and bringing all sorts of different opinions and information to the table, the distillation of those opinions is a real wisdom of crowds effect. It's sort of the consensus view of everyone willing to bet. And so in politics, there is a lot of value to that. The question is, does the same apply to sports and pop culture and the weather and wars and all these other things that Kalshi and its competitors now offer?
We have less than a minute left, and so let me ask you this. There are people in Canada, at least, who feel like, there's just too much sports betting. You can't turn on a hockey game without seeing a handful of ads for it. And now we live in a world where you can bet on everything, including, when's the next snowstorm going to hit Toronto. Should we be dismayed by this? Are we just getting swallowed up by gambling?
I think there is potentially some public value in certain categories, the more economic-oriented markets, even politics you could make a case for. The problem is if we label this as investing, as a real way for people to leverage their knowledge and make money, as opposed to gambling. And in Canada and the US and all over the world, we're seeing rising rates of problem gambling. And if this adds to the confusion of seducing people into thinking they can turn this into a money-making opportunity, that I think is genuinely dangerous.
The house always wins.
No doubt about it, even in markets.
Danny Funt, freelance journalist who predicts or covers, doesn't predict, he covers prediction markets. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.